Let's cross live now to Chicago and speak with Arise international correspondent Faith Orr for more on how day two of the DNC played out. Good to see you, Faith. And, former President Obama's remarks emphasized that the 2024 election is expected to be a tight race against the Republicans. Now, what did he specifically highlight as the key challenges or threats facing the Democratic Party this cycle?
I think his appearance really was to rally the party behind Kamala Harris. Now, it was also a reminder of just how good a public speaker Barack Obama is. Some people even calling for him to run for a third term, which of course is impossible, but it really just a reminder that this is where his power lies. He did have quite a funny thing to say. He said, even if he's the only person stupid enough to speak after Michelle Obama, who of course also addressed the crowd last night. Obama told people here that America was ready for Kamala Harris and that she was ready to be president. He also spoke of the need about lots of issues that they're campaigning on, for instance, housing. He said we need to build more housing, we need to get rid of the laws that are stopping homes being built, and we need to help people get themselves out of homelessness into homes across the country. It's interesting that actually Kamala Harris wasn't there last night. She and Tim Walz were at another rally, and people have described this as quite funny because they were at the same site that the RNC had been at, and they filled the centre here. So on the same night they had filled two event centres.
And what were the main policy priorities and campaign promises that Obama urged Democrats to focus on to win back the White House and maintain control of Congress?
As we've been discussing, the economy is really top of a lot of people's minds. Job numbers, inflation, homes, but healthcare is also on the bill, and people are concerned about all of these things. So Obama using that very much to urge the Democrats forward. We are going to hear more policy announcements as well, but he touched on a range of issues, as I say, all of which very concerning to people across the United States.
And Grisham's appearance was a big one. As a former Trump administration official, that generated some controversy. What was the strategic rationale behind the DNC featuring her, and how did her remarks land with the party faithful?
Her remarks went down very well. I think it was a very clever move to put her on that stage. She was Trump's former press secretary, so she was able to give the kind of inside knowledge about how he ran his administration. She described very much his selfishness. She spoke of when he had visited a hospital and he was annoyed that the cameras were looking at the patients and not at him. She spoke of the fact that he was so willing to lie that he simply said, if you say something often enough, people will believe it. So she spoke of his low morals, his low aptitude for the truth, and she also spoke very lowly of Melania Trump, who refused to let her stop the violence on January the 6th, to even tweet that violence shouldn't be acceptable. And it was funny because when we heard from Michelle Obama, and in her 2016 speech, she had very much said, when they go low, we go high. She seems to have dropped that rhetoric. She really is running out of patience with this. Her attitude is changing, and it's very much more now, well, if they want to go low, we can take them on.
I was actually saving that for last. Now you're talking about Michelle. Let's delve in. A fiery speech. She came smoking. Let us in on how the audience received Michelle and her speech on the night.
Running mate comes out on stage. I don't think Tim Walz is going to deviate from
of course, this is Chicago. She was very, very well received, not just for her own speech. When her and Barack Obama were both on the stage, this is their old hometown. They were never going to get a bad reception at the United Centre here. She speaks, as well as she always has. She is a fan favourite. Many people wish that she would run for president. Of course, she's said on numerous occasions that she has no intentions of doing that. But yeah, I think if she was willing to put her hat in the ring, she would definitely be in with a chance.
Okay, now, Faith, let's talk more about some of the critical battleground states and demographic groups that the DNC is targeting through the messaging and staging of this convention.
I mean, it's interesting when we see that actually in some key swing states, in about 7 battleground states, Harris now leads Trump, whereas before Trump was leading over Biden. So it is interesting to see that, but it's an indication of just how tight this race still is, that Harris and Walz were not here last night. They were out at a campaign rally, so clearly they're still taking things very seriously. They are still out there trying to drum up support. They're not getting lackadaisical with this campaign in the slightest. They are back here tonight. Tim Walz will give his acceptance speech as the nominee for Vice President later on. Of course, host of big names speaking tonight.
Speaking of which, looking ahead to day 3, what are the expectations around the speeches planned by current figures like Tim Walz, Bill Clinton, and Nancy Pelosi?
Yeah, well, it's funny that you mentioned Nancy Pelosi there. I think her speech is going to be one of the most closely watched. And that's simply because it's understood she was one of the key main figures pushing for Biden to give way to Kamala Harris. So her speech will be very interesting to see. We're also going to hear from former President Bill Clinton. So again, that should be a good one here tonight. And we're going to hear some musical performances too. John Legend is going to be singing to the crowd later on. As well, we understand, is Stevie Wonder. So it's going to be a big night at the Democratic National Convention here in Chicago.
There's a bit of discussion concerning, policies or campaigns, making people to ask how the Democrats are seeking to differentiate their vision and platform from the Republican agenda as they head towards the big day for this election.
I mean, yes, this is the problem, is that both sides are trying to persuade voters that their ideas are the best. One of the key issues which has been surrounding this convention, of course, is Israel's war on Gaza, which so many people have been protesting outside. They're not happy with how the Democratic Party, the US government, is handling that. We have seen thousands of people showing up for protests. Just last night there was about 70 arrests outside the Israeli embassy. There was some violence with police there. We did see some scuffles. So again, one of the key issues there. But the problem is when you speak to people and you say, well, do you actually think the Republicans would handle this any differently? And they say, no. Both parties very much have the same opinion on this. So it's going to be interesting to see how Kamala Harris approaches that, tries to win those votes back.
Well, Faith, I'd like to thank you for your time. Thank you for giving us an update on the DNC. We'll come back to you in the course of our other bulletins. International correspondent live there in Chicago giving us an update on the DNC.